Hey y'all, so I'm going to share a UFO sighting story. Now, this is not a story that I experienced personally, but it was told to me. And because it happened, I would say like in the 70s. And that's me kind of estimating the time because I don't necessarily have an exact date, but I feel like I want to share the story. And so this particular UFO story happened in Mississippi. It's kind of interesting because there's another prominent story that happened in Mississippi. They talk about like the Pascagoula UFO sighting, but this particular um, experience happened in my hometown. But this was before I was born, and when I was a child, I was at my grandmother's house and watching this TV show called Lewis and Clark. It was about Superman. It was Superman: The New Adventures of Lewis and Clark, and there was a scene on the series, and then my grandmother commented that, "Oh, that looks a lot like what we saw in the backyard." Okay, so I was kind of fascinated, like, what? Tell me more. I want to know, about whatever this experience was. So, anyway, so she tells me the story, and not only did she see it, some other family members saw this too. So I was able to go around and, you know, ask all of them about this particular experience. And because they were like, black in the 70s and whatnot, I don't think there was really like anywhere for them to go and like report this story or anything like that. But, it's kind of like a shared family experience. So let me tell you the story. So anyway, this is what my grandmother says happened. So they are in this small town, Carrollton, Mississippi, where we live. And even when I grow up, it's probably like very similar. So like my grandmother's house sits there's like a little dirt road, and at the very end of the dirt road is my grandmother's house. And in the backyard they had a clothesline. So I know today everybody has a washer and a dryer, but back then they had a clothesline. So you wash the clothes and then you take your clothes and you hang them out on the clothesline. During the day in the sun, they dry. You go in, you take the clothes off the line, at the end of the day. So this is like the end of the day. The sun is beginning to set, and they are going to take the clothes off the clothesline. So my mother, being like the oldest of her sisters who were living with them at the time, she is helping my grandmother take the clothes off the line. I think one of her sisters is kind of just sitting on the steps at the back door while they take the clothes off the line, right? And so while they're doing this, they see what I'm going to describe as an orb, right? And they see it coming across the sky, and this orb comes down toward them. So I'm assuming that they like spot it, they're seeing it coming toward them, and then my grandmother describes squatting down onto the ground because it's coming that close to them, that like her fear is that whatever this thing is going to overtake her in some type of way, like it's coming down upon them. So she says she is like, going down to the ground, and this orb is like coming down. I don't know, how close it necessarily got to them, but presumably it got, so close that my grandmother, her, escape is to squat down as opposed to run this direction or that direction, right? So it feels like it's coming pretty close. Now my grandmother described that the thing that we saw on Lewis and Clark was something like a fireball, right? My mother, so I then go and ask her about this experience, and so the thing comes down on them, and then my grandmother said like just pulls away, and goes away. My mother described it as, cause so I go and ask her, and she's like, yeah, and she's a little hesitant to talk about it because I think she her philosophy is more like, not to talk about things, right? Especially as a child, she's like, oh, that's something that's going to scare her children, so she doesn't really want to like share the story. But I'm inquisitive, I ask about it. So she says that um, to her, what she saw was a ball of light, and that the ball of light was like a rainbow. Like the lights were changing kind of color inside of it. Now, apparently, my mother saw this thing more than once. She said that was not her first time seeing it, or either that was the first time she saw it again, but I believe that was not her first time seeing it. She had seen it earlier. She said that she was driving. I think, back then, maybe at 15 or 16, she begins to drive, the car for my grandmother once she gets like a learner's permit or a driver's license or something like that. So she's doing all the driving, and they're coming in from town, and she sees this thing in the sky as they're driving. So this was like actually her second time seeing whatever this orb was. And I asked her sisters, they all say they remember seeing it too, as well as other people in this small town of Carrollton said they saw this thing back in the 1970s, right? And it was actually written about in the newspaper. This is what I'm told. So I haven't seen the newspaper article, but I'm told that, after that, the newspaper reported that what everyone had seen had been a weather balloon, which always seems to be the case. Me personally, I've never seen a weather balloon or an orb in real life, so I can't really say, whether or not I would have been like, oh, what I saw was not a weather balloon. But, my mother and my grandmother both described this thing as a light. And I understand, like, light tricks, especially at sunset. Like I was just looking at the sky, around sunset yesterday, and it was all pink and purple, and I'm like, oh, this is really, really nice. But you understand that that's like a illusion that happens, that creates that different color of refracting, bending the sunlight and whatnot. So it could have very well been like, a balloon that's shiny and you see light, but it didn't. What they described was seeing like a ball of light. They did not describe any like physical craft. They did not describe any physical beings, but they did describe like two things that I would say are interesting. One was that it seemed to like come toward them very quickly, and it seemed to leave very quickly. And the second thing, in it leaving, it seems to like, leave and disappear very, very fast, right? Which I think is kind of typical when you hear about UFO sighting experiences. And then the second thing was that that like in the immediate aftermath of it, they seem to like, I guess, like put it behind them and like forget about it for a long while, or like something they just didn't talk about. So I don't know if there was like a lost memory of sorts, but it seemed to like be something that they didn't really, discuss very much, like in the aftermath. It's like a scary experience, but then they didn't really like talk about it too much after that. So I just find that it was a very fascinating story to me that they experienced, and particularly because orbs seem to be something that people see a lot. These kind of circular things, right? And I guess the way my mom described it is like circular light, and the colors kind of moving around in it, like a rainbow of different colors, kind of like pulsating in this plasma or whatever. So yeah, that happened in Mississippi, and I would say um, the mid '70s to like the late '70s. If I were going to guess a specific date, I would say my mom was probably like 16. So that would probably be uh, so like 74, 75. Um, so yeah, I think it happened. Some like I said, around the mid '70s. I feel like the Pascagoula, um, you know, UFO sighting was sometime in like the early '70s, around that time. So this was like a time when people were seeing, you know, having a lot of sightings. But I guess today people have even more sightings. I haven't. I've yet to see a UFO, so I don't know. But yeah, I wanted to share that story. The other there's more to this story. Now this is something very different. My grandfather was driving 18 a semi 18 wheeler at the time. Like even when I was um, by the time I came along, he was still driving an 18 wheeler. But so one of my aunts said that, and so they were recounting this story, talking about this, and I don't know that this aunt was necessarily there. She might have been there, but she was, she recalls this incident, and she was saying that uh, that not only did that incident happen, there's an incident where my grandfather, when he's like, driving his 18 wheeler, which he would, I always known him to like wake up very early in the morning to leave. He would like actually haul gravel kind of regionally. So waking up early, going to get gravel to move gravel for different work projects, right? And she said that at some point while he was, uh, doing this work on the 18 wheeler, that he was found on the side of the road, right? So he had pulled over because at some point when he's driving at night, he sees a craft over his truck, and it's just spewing down like fire over his truck. And it must have, frightened him a lot because, I'm assuming he's alone and he's experiencing this, so he pulls over and I guess stops him by the time someone comes to meet him, because at the time they had these, where they go breaker breaker 19, the little truck radios kind of thing. So maybe someone came to meet him. So she said they found him on the side of the road, kind of like in tears, because of this experience of seeing like this craft over his 18 wheeler, and it just raining down fire. So those are two experiences that I have heard about from my family, and I think it's kind of fascinating because you in terms of black people and their UFO experiences, I don't know that I've seen a lot of examples of that, but Barney Hills, the interracial couples, that was a black man and his white wife, one of the very first stories, and he has these initials BH. My initials are BH. My mom's initials are BH. I don't know if that's significant. And Betty Hill, their initials are BH, and both of my parents' initials are BH as well. But anyway, um, uh, there is that story, and then the Zimbabwe UFO story, where it was like um, these school children, and this is going to be in this new Netflix show that's coming out. I think any day now it's going to drop, but they're going to really talk about the Zimbabwe UFO experience, because these kids actually saw a craft. They saw alien beings. The beings communicated a message to them about being too, that like we're on this path of destruction because we're too reliant on technology. The little girl said we're becoming too technologed. And I don't know personally of very many other UFO sighting experiences where there are black people kind of account making these accounts, but I'm sure there are out there. So that's why I wanted to share this particular one, because this is an experience that my black family experienced. And my grandmother has since passed away, so this was like something that I asked her about. I first found about when I was a kid, but even before she passed, like a few years ago, when I was back there around the time that she had been in the hospital and then she was out, so like I was there kind of trying to help out a little bit as she was healing. And I did revisit the story with her, and they kind of talked about it, tell me about it, asking different questions, asking like, because we're out in the same like location where it happened, so like asking them, well, which direction did it come from, show me like the path that it moved, how big was it, things like that. So like, yeah, they kind of told me a lot about it. I thought it was fascinating. And crazy thing is, peers like where my room in the house, because then my parents built a house next door to my grandmother's house, so where my room was kind of like on the second floor in this corner seems to be where the trajectory of the orb kind of like passed through. It seems like it passed on that corner of our house, you know, where my room would have been, which I thought that's kind of fascinating too. So who knows what this kind of experience was, but yeah, that was something that my parents experienced. I would love to hear if you have actually seen a UFO or something, paranormal, um, and what that would experience was like for you. And I think that is, we probably have like a lot of older family members who have experienced things that they just, don't ever share because no one asked them about it. So it'd be very interesting to like, ask your older relatives, have they ever seen like a UFO or things like that, and see if they have indeed seen them. All right.